This is the thing, and my mum will say this a lot. If you want to be really fussy and particular about your roses, you can. That's fine. But you also don't have to. You can just leave them alone. You can prune them once a year, hack them back, give them some fertiliser, and that's that.
Hello, petals, and welcome back to the podcast. I am thrilled that today I get the chance to talk roses and crab apples with Samantha Matthews of Matthews Nurseries. Can you tell I'm just a little bit excited? Matthews Nurseries have been growing roses since 1947, and 3 generations of the Matthews family have now been involved in the business. Welcome, Samantha. It's fantastic to have you here.
Hello, Joe. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start by talking about the subject dearest to your heart, or to Matthews Nursery's heart, and that's a little bit about breeding roses. What first inspired your grandparents to become rose breeders?
Well, with my grandparents, I think it was more just a passion for plants in general. And Granddad didn't actually get into breeding roses so much. That was actually more my dad when he was younger. But Granddad imported roses, and he just had a passion for all plants. In terms of breeding, his thing that he was passionate about was actually breeding the crab apples, which was a bit of a sort of retirement activity. So, yeah.
Can you explain in simple terms for us that don't breed plants, how does a new rose variety begin?
Well, it's quite a lengthy process. It all starts actually with just thinking about genetics and wanting to create the healthiest rose we can. So we're always looking at varieties that might make really good parents, that either are really healthy, have the repeat flowering gene, have good fragrance, although quite often it's hard to get good fragrance and health to align. It's quite a long process. Dad used to say it takes anything from 6 to 10 years, but it's more like up to 12 now. So we have a glass house here on site, and we have our mother plants in there, and it's just a process of controlled pollination. So when you're outside, the bees will buzz about pollinating the flowers, but what we want to do is we want to track who the mum and dads are, and we collect pollen off one variety, and then we will pollinate that onto another plant. And it's all tagged so we can track that in our breeding books. And yeah, we can do quite a few crosses in a season. And for example, last year we planted 50,000 seeds from that year's pollination. And then Dad's 50,000. And then Dad's picked maybe 600 seedlings from that range, and they'll get planted out this winter. So like before you've even looked at them the first time outside, it's already taken 2 years. So once you've got your seedlings that you've picked, you will then assess them the year after. And then from there, we will bud them onto the rootstock in our spray-free trials. So that's now maybe 4 or 5 years. And then if you're thinking it might be good enough for release, you need to propagate up enough plants for potential propagation materials. But I like to say we do all the work. So then you know that when you go to choose a rose at a garden centre or for your flower farm, you know that we've put the hard yards in, so then you can literally just plonk it and not worry about what it's going to do, because we've spent the time figuring out what it's going to do.
That's amazing. So what traits are you actually looking for then? Because you said that fragrance was hard to breed with health. How do you know what traits you're looking for?
Well, we just sort of like to think about what we would like in our own garden. For Dad, for years, it's always been repeat flowering.
Yes.
Quite a few old-fashioned roses might only flower once, and there is actually quite a beauty to that. It makes that flowering even more special. But through the modern times of rose breeding for commercial purposes, that repeat flowering gene has come through. So that for us is quite key, just to have a rose that will just flower and flower. For example, one of Dad's varieties, My Best Mate, still flowering right now. It's, going to be the second week of June next week. We want people to get as many flowers as they can out of the rose, and health is top. So a rose that doesn't need spraying is pretty much bomb-proof, and with beautiful glossy foliage, and that retains the foliage throughout the season so you don't get that leaf drop. That's the 2 key things for us. Vigour and flower power. Yeah,
I love that, flower power. That just makes sense to me, that you're looking for flower power. And you said that I think your dad planted 50,000 seeds. Was that right?
That's what we're averaging from each year's hybridizing program at the moment. Some years you can have more, some years you can have less. And then from that whole year's worth of breeding, you might only ever release one variety from that year.
That's the question I was leading towards. It just blows my mind that you have to plant that many seeds to even get to start to know whether you've got something that might make an outstanding rose. It's such a process, isn't it?
Well, we have noticed that it's actually getting harder and harder to choose. Like there's definitely healthier roses, more beautiful colour ranges and different forms coming through. We're finding it harder and harder to select, but you've got to be tough to choose the best of the best because you've got so many to choose from.
That to me would be really, really hard to reject a rose for only one minor point.
Yes.
But for you guys, it's your reputation.
I say often we have robust discussions in the trial blocks between me and Dad. And my mum, Kath, can be the casting vote sometimes, and our staff will come as well. And sometimes you do get attached to seedlings that for whatever reason they might not ever get released. And I do feel like a bad mother. I feel like I've let them down that they don't get picked. But you can't have everything. And for whatever reason, some of them just cross the line and just have that extra X factor. So yeah. Some of it is intuition, some of it is just a feeling you get from it, and some of it is just the pure performance of the plant.
In the change to our growing seasons over the last couple of years, a plant may perform really well now, but do you breed it to be thinking about how it is going to perform in 5 years, 10 years when maybe it's drier, maybe it's wetter? You just can't know all that stuff. That's so hard.
Yes, and that's the thing about roses though, they're really hardy plants, and where we are in Wanganui is a really, really good climate for trialling, we've found. We're quite mild, but we still get a good winter and we still get a good summer. So we can have really hot, dry summers, or this year is actually one of the wettest summers we've had for a long time.
Yeah, us too.
So and then we've had a really dry May. We've had no rain for a whole month and it just rained yesterday. So,
yes.
But with that trialling, we haven't sprayed our trial blocks for like 20 years. So you've already got the just pure normal environmental factors where we're not spraying any of the plants. So we're really just having a look at how they are. They're actually grown quite close together as well, which can add extra pressure, sort of competition. So we're putting them to quite a tough test. And like I said, the bare minimum would be 7 years of trialling. So over that time, you have lots of different changes and seasons. So we have extensive notes and assessments that go back, and if you have a dry year, you will notice the ones that might drop their leaves or get a bit of rust when they're under pressure. So that's all in the notes, and that's why we like to have quite a few seasons and cycles to really get to know what they're like.
So when you say your trial blocks are spray-free,
yes,
do you mean they are spray-free for disease or spray-free for pests or both?
Everything. So they're not sprayed. We've got a really robust rootstock that all our varieties are grown on. So in the trials, all our seedlings are budded onto that same rootstock. But yeah, they're just left to grow. They might get some fertiliser once a year, and that's it. They don't get a copper, they get nothing. You can be walking the rows and you can have one variety completely covered in aphids and the one next to it is clean as a whistle. So sometimes things like that could be purely the taste of the sap.
The fragrance?
Yeah, we find sometimes the rabbits like quite fragrant roses. So I don't know whether the fragrance of a flower transfers into the leaves, but we figured out that some bunnies were liking the fragrant ones. So maybe their leaves are tasty. Who knows?
Yeah. If you can get a rabbit to answer that for you, that would help all of us flower farmers that are plagued by rabbits.
Yeah, I know what it's like. So we need to maybe do some trialling for that, but they tend to stay away from our nursery. I guess in New Zealand, we've got possums around a bit too, and that's just what we all deal with. Someone needs to do a study on the taste of leaves versus fragrance in the flower.
Have you ever had a rose that completely exceeded your expectations when you did the breeding?
That's really interesting. When me and Dad were walking the trials and we first came up with the idea for the My Rose collection, that was sort of that moment where you really were like, wow, there's something about these. And it wasn't just one particular seedling, it was actually a whole bunch of them all together, and there was just something about it, and we were like, what is going on here? And then we clicked that they were all bred from my mum. And yeah, a moment in time for me was what started that collection. And there was something about the fragrance with that rose as well that you just kept coming back to. So for me personally, a moment in time is quite important. That sort of was the springboard for the idea for the collection. And then, I mean, not to sound, I don't know, this sound a bit silly, but I mean, I do have my rose Samantha Jean, which I feel a bit weird talking about sometimes, but it's like, we had that for years, and the only note on it was Sam's favourite. And for years and years, that's all it had. And Mum's got her rose, Catherine, and yeah, we'd been doing this for a while, and Dad was like, well, look at the notes. It says it's Sam's rose. So that became Samantha Jean, and there's something about the fragrance with that as well. But I'm not perfect. It exceeded my expectations for fragrance and form, but a bit tall, but good for picking. So flower farmers, take note. Yeah.
Have you ever spent years developing a rose only then to discard it after those 7 years of trials? Do you do that?
Yeah. We just cleared out one of our old trial blocks a couple of weeks ago because we need to make sure we have good rotation. So we're really lucky with our farm that we rotate our nursery around different paddocks. We average 6 to 10 years in between rose crops. So if you're to come visit the nursery, you'll find us in a different spot rotating around the farm, and we're the same with our trial blocks as well, which are in a separate area. And yeah, we can't keep them forever. And as much as I love to keep wandering around and taking photos and enjoying them, we have to give the blocks a rest. So we make sure that we've cut budwood off everything that we liked, that there's no hidden treasures left behind. I was still out there digging a few plants to save, to pop somewhere just in case, because I can't help myself. But no, they have to come out. They had their time, and now we're on to the next thing. Yeah.
So leading on to that then, what does the perfect rose look like for you?
Well, for me, I start from the ground up. It's like backwards. The foliage, the leaves. I prefer glossy foliage. And then you're going through the plant structure. Is it bushy, nice, compact, even growth? I don't like things that are a bit spindly and sparse. And I mean, climbers are allowed to climb. That's fine. But yeah, the plant structure, the leaf is just as important for us as that flower form. And you want a flower that doesn't fall in the rain and hang on. You want it to drop clean. I could go on and on and on, Jo. But yeah, the perfect rose still doesn't exist. That's why we're all still trying to do what we can. Yeah.
It'd be a bit sad if you suddenly found it and then thought, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow? I've
No,
just planted
like-
for 50,000 seeds.
Done. Job done.
Yeah, move on. Okay, become a flower farmer at that point.
Yes.
So what characteristics are hardest to breed for?
Well, that would be the health and fragrance combo. Again, with that modern breeding, people have bred a lot for fragrance for some lines, and it's become harder and harder to get the health gene to marry up with that. I suppose maybe back in the day it might have been health, because when a lot of the modern hybrid teas were developed, they were more with the mindset of about that perfect exhibition bloom. They're just spraying everything, and it was all about that flower. Whereas these days, it's more about the garden and how the rose performs throughout the season and interacting with other plants. It's not just about that flower. It's a lot of trial and error.
Fragrance and health, most rose lovers would want, whether they're flower farmers or otherwise, and yet it's the hardest thing to breed for.
But some of our most popular roses all around the world don't actually have much scent. So it's not a game changer as where it's not a be-all and end-all. Like iceberg is still one of the world's most popular roses.
Yeah.
People say that it's my mum behind me. People say that my mum has a great scent. To me, she's more of a delicate fragrance, but there is something there.
Let me just cut in there in case anyone is just listening. Samantha is pointing to a photograph of flowers on the rose My Mum. It's not actually her mum standing behind her who smells.
Sorry. Again, my mum's our most popular rose, so I just say my mum all the time, and people think I'm talking about cats, so that you're onto it, Jo.
Sorry, a little giggle there, but I have to say I do love the rose My Mum. So you go to a huge amount of effort then to balance beauty with plant performance, but can you predict when you're doing a cross how much the genetics are going to impact on what you're growing? Is that possible?
To a certain point, but there's so many genes at play, and there's so many ways that, I mean, it's just like us, that things can throw back to grandparents and great-great-grandparents. So you never know what you're going to get, but we, over the years, we've tracked different combinations that tend to consistently give us what we want over time. So then we might carry on with that, but then you don't want to get stuck in a rut. So like the My Rose collection, they are all bred from my mum, but there are different dads, as it were. We know what consistently is giving us what we want. So we're always trying new things, and a lot of rose breeders will breed from seedlings that have never been commercially released, but they might have the attributes you want as a breeder. So even though they might not get released, we will breed from them.
You breed from them, or you'd use them as mother stock? I'm trying to get the word.
Yeah,
right.
well, we would use them either for pollen, or some varieties are better as seed parents.
Right.
And they hold their hips longer. So it's just trial and error, but you never know what you're going to get. So we try our best, but yeah, that's all part of the fun of it. I mean, Dad's 75 and he still is so excited when those first seedlings pop up, because you never know what they're going to come out like. So that's all part of the fun of doing it, and that's what gets you hooked. Yeah.
I'm just thinking here, the intellectual property that exists within your organisation must be staggering. So, I mean, there's just so much information that you have got yourselves. That blows me away.
Yeah, I guess we don't sort of think about it sometimes, although when we have to pay our plant variety right renewals,
You might do. Yeah.
that's a topic of conversation at the moment with lots of plant breeders in New Zealand. It's becoming more and more expensive and difficult to protect the varieties that you're creating. And rose breeding has an interesting history in that, with Dr. Sam McGreedy, with his rose breeding, he helped to establish the Plant Variety Rights Act in New Zealand. Because, as you can see, all that behind-the-scenes work as a breeder, to be paid a royalty used to cover somewhat of the cost of all the background work, but these days it's not. It's a topic that is being discussed among many breeders around the world. They have just extended some of the time of protection in New Zealand, which is good. But yeah, it's quite a fun process doing plant variety rights applications, and you've got to prove that your variety is completely unique, and it's quite an assessment period, and it's a very niche thing. But yeah, once it's got the seal of approval, and it will say that on the plant tag that New Zealand Plant Variety Rights apply, and then you know that that's a unique variety to that breeder, and yeah, that protects us. So if other growers want to grow it, they need to check with us first.
Yeah.
And pay a royalty, which is fair. So yeah.
It is. I think every grower who has got to the point of having a PVR, it should be honoured by people. They've earned that. They've paid their dues, now pay them their money. You know, it's like getting a plumber to come and do your plumbing and then saying, oh no, I could have done that anyway.
Yeah, because we import from other breeders, we look after their varieties in New Zealand for them on their behalf as agents. So
yeah,
because we're breeders ourselves, we understand the importance of that, and we take that quite seriously to make sure that their varieties are handled properly in New Zealand. Yeah.
I agree. So have you ever had an instance where your breeding results have completely surprised you?
I had a few where I was really disappointed and I thought it was going to be the one, and then for whatever reason it just didn't cut the mustard, and no matter how hard me and Dad tried, we just not. And that can be disappointing. It can also be a little bit funny when we import roses from overseas as well, and we will trial them here in New Zealand. And you can see photos online of what they're like overseas, but you've got to trial them here first.
Yes.
And there'll be ones that I think are going to be amazing and they're maybe not quite right. But then there's other ones that we've had feedback from international breeders that, it didn't do that well for them, but here in New Zealand it's amazing. And we've decided to release it. And they've been pleasantly surprised that we like it more than they do. So,
do you think that comes from the intensity of our light? Because I think that has a huge amount to deal with it, you know, with our UV, and the colours come across differently here. It's the same with peonies, you know, they come across quite differently here. Okay.
They do, and it never really used to be much of a problem. Like before the internet, people wouldn't be able to Google and see what they look like over there. But now people are looking on Instagram, they're looking, and we get a lot of feedback as well from people saying, oh, they want this or they want that, or it looks different. And we often, like with photography, we will try and use all of our own imagery of the images taken here. Because our UV is so strong, you can get quite a lot of fading on some varieties and they don't hold their colour. So that's part of the trialling. But we want to make sure that what the customer sees on that description and that label is matching to how it grows in New Zealand. So the light and the UV can affect some varieties in an interesting way that you just don't know till you look at them growing here. So, yeah.
That makes complete and utter sense to me. Now, we're going to take a short break now for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back to talk the best varieties of roses as cut flowers, plus some bonus chat about crab apples. Love the growing but over the constant hustle for buyers? Our partners at Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers can help with that. Juggling dozens of tiny retail accounts or losing your weekends selling at the local market takes time and energy. By partnering with Fresh Cut, you get instant access to florists and supermarkets nationwide. Selling wholesale means a reliable income, and the best part, you get your time back. Simplify your business and focus on what you do best, growing gorgeous blooms. There's excitement ahead with big ideas blooming, but why not visit Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers at wholesaleflowers.nz to see how easy it is to become a supplier. Fresh Cut, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. Now back to the show. So tell me, what traits do you think that flower farmers should be looking for when choosing varieties? And then we'll see if I'm thinking the same thing from a flower farmer's point of view.
Okay. This is where it gets a bit different because we're so focused on garden, and sometimes for us, picking is just like a bonus. But for flower farmers, that's your business, right? You're booking events, you're booking weddings, you're doing what you're doing. You want that flower to hold. So we're paying more attention to it now.
Thank you.
So in saying that though, you talk to my mum, Kath, she will say you can pick any rose, and you can pick any rose. It can sometimes just be down to environmental things on the day, the time of day you pick the flower. Yeah. So some varieties are known to hold for longer periods, but you can pretty much pick anything if you really want to. So I wouldn't be deterred from trying the single open flowers in combination with the more traditional hybrid tea types that people tend to gravitate to for picking. But
it's interesting though, isn't it? Because the singles are harder to transport.
Yes.
So that's a point. And one of the other things that flower farmers are always looking for is something which is as thornless as possible, because that's time. So I know we're very demanding.
Now, okay, we've tried a thornless rose. So let me just give you a bit of background. So the fruit of the rose is that hip that will form once it's been pollinated under the flower. And those thorns are there to protect their baby seeds in that hip.
Right.
So often you'll find the best roses will have the most thorns because they're the most tough, protect my baby roses.
Okay.
So in terms of picking as well and the plant performance, they will store extra energy in their thorns. So thorny plants will do quite well in the wild. If they're in the drought, they can store extra energy in their thorns as well as in their roots. So thorns are not all bad, if that helps you guys think about it. That is something we do think about, and when you've got the longer stems and thorns that come off a bit easier, it does all add into it. But that's all part of working out your charging. But yeah, thorns just they are what they are, and get that tea towel, wrap it around. Poof, it's good sort of anger management, I find, weeding and stripping thorns. Just think of someone you don't like and rip them off. Done.
That's lovely. So just again, from a flower farmer's point of view, disease resistance, which you're breeding for, glossy leaves, which you love, which I absolutely adore because we're Central Otago and we don't have many glossy plants. They just don't do well here. Great vase life. Obviously, for a flower farmer, great vase life is excellent. And flower form.
It is an interesting thing with the different trends coming through over the years. We do notice shifts in what people want with that flower form.
I planted quite a few David Austin roses,
Mm.
and I have to say they're disappointing in Central Otago. I think we're too dry for them. When you think about it, it makes sense. They're an English rose, and the soil and the moisture content when you're growing in England is so different from incredibly free, draining, stony, hot Central Otago. Why did I
Yes.
think that that was going to be a good idea? I mean, your
Yes.
soil must be amazing, and ours is absolute rubbish. So
Well, we're heavy clay here where we are
clay's
on our farm.
nutrient rich. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it can be a factor, but just thinking about the Austins as well, like we've been importing the newer releases from Austins and their performance is on a par with ours, and
Really?
doing that trialling before release is really good.
Knowledge has increased, so the breeding is different,
Yes.
for everybody.
It is something to think about where you are. Like in New Zealand, there's so many different little sub-climates in a way.
I did ask a few people whether they had some questions from flower farmers. One of them you've already answered, because Linda asked, are the best garden roses always the best roses for floristry? And Kath actually said you can cut any flower.
Yeah.
So
There is a whole line of breeders that are purely breeding for cut flower only in a glasshouse environment. I think the time of day you pick's important. I mean, back in the day, we used to pick roses for weddings and things from the nursery, but we no longer do that. The thought of booking a wedding or doing something and then having an absolute torrential rainstorm, which you guys can totally relate to. So that's something as well we're looking at too, is especially with the whites and things like that. You want ones that don't go brown even in the rain. So Mum is pretty good with all of that. So if you have got specific questions on varieties or you're not sure, feel free to give us a ring.
Perfect. So Susan wanted to know what rose characteristics contribute to excellent vase life. How do you choose that?
That's a good question. I mean, traditionally more the hybrid teas do hold better because they have that one flower per stem. So all that water, all that, goodness they need to keep fresh is only going to that one flower, not a whole bunch. So that's why traditionally the hybrid teas are better for picking.
So Becky was interested to hear what colours or styles are currently in demand.
Well, if you asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, it was coffee, beige, cappuccino, which is bred from cut fever, which cut fever is an amazing cut flower rose, but it's a total diva. And we're going to delete cut fever and just do cappuccino. But then cappuccino got so popular and people kept asking for cut fever. We basically just did it for some flower farmers. But genetically, they're really hard colours because I think in the real world, in the wilderness, the bees maybe aren't as attracted to those muted tones. So then they're maybe not the healthiest plants. So we're sort of forcing them to be superstars. It's a really good question with the trends because I guess I kind of thought we knew what the trends were, but it's actually really hard. Sometimes you can look at what's happening in fashion. You've got the 90s is big right now, but I don't think the 90s roses are back. At the moment, it's still that vintage ruffle form is still in, which I love because to me that's my personal favourite. And I think that is holding firm and it's becoming more classic and romantic and timeless to have that multi-petal form. I hope that stays. I'm a bit biased.
I love that description though, classic, romantic and timeless. Isn't that perfect? And to be honest, that would be what a flower farmer would be looking for because it won't matter so much whether the general trends change. If you've got enough of those timeless varieties in your flower field, you've got the bones of a really good rose stock crop. Yeah.
It's cool. and that's how we run our nursery as well. So it is a balance. Yeah.
So I had quite a number of people ask me to ask you your top 10 roses. I'm not going to do that, but if you had your top 3 or your top 5, I'd love to hear that. The pressure.
They're all my favourite precious babies. Again, it's the My Rose collection. There's quite a few varieties in there now, but there's some, again, I come back to A Moment in Time is one of my favourites.
Samantha Jean.
I know, I feel weird saying it, but the fragrance, but she is tall, but she's good for picking. More recently, I have to say Aroha, and we're falling more and more in love with that rose. And it is more a traditional hybrid tea shape, which is really interesting.
Colour?
That I didn't, true red, like cherry red. We released it last year, and it's fantastic for picking. It's that really traditional, perfect red bud. And again, there's something about it that it seems a bit fresher, it seems a bit updated, it seems like a new sort of era of red rose. So I'm really excited about Aroha, and it's got the health to back it up. That's moving into my top 10 now. And with the My Rose collection,
Okay.
I've got a hybrid tea in there. Woo.
Oh, whoop.
Many people are surprised that we don't irrigate our fields. We never have. The roses are just grown in the paddock, and our public rose garden, which is literally on the side of a state highway in the middle of a maize paddock, 10 minutes south of Wanganui, with a free salt spray from the ocean,
Okay.
is not irrigated. So the roses are really tough. They're really hardy. And when they're actually left to their own devices, they will naturally send their roots out to look for extra moisture, and that will help set up the plants. So we do see from time to time with flower farmers running dripper lines and weed mat and things that actually sometimes it's better to just leave the roses to do their own thing. We understand if you're picking all the time, it might put extra pressure on the plant, but what you might need to do is just have a bit extra fertilizer application. Instead of once a season, do it twice a season, things like that. Sometimes it can be better to leave the plant to do their own thing, and they actually become hardier and stronger.
So last question about roses before we move on to crab apples. What has been your most successful rose?
Well, without a question, it would be my mum. And that all just sort of came about rather organically. It wasn't like some planned marketing thing. It just happened to be a seedling that Dad had planted in his mum's garden in town, Grandma Pill. Papa Tom had passed away a couple of years before, and Dad would often plant seedlings in her garden in town to cheer her up. And to be honest, this coral pink one, we had not necessarily bypassed it, but it was in the trials, but it wasn't, we were just, oh, yep. But Grandma would not shut up about it. She was like, this rose is amazing. It's her favourite one. So Dad was like, okay, if it's my mum's favourite rose, I'm going to call it my mum for my mum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did, and the rest is history, as they say.
Okay. But no, I love the name of it, and people just love the way it performs. Right. Let's move on to crab apples and talk about the crab apples that you have at Matthews Nurseries. I'm a massive fan of crab apples for both the garden and for floristry. Your line of crab apples there have been bred by your granddad, is that right?
So Papa Tom was, he was just into plants, all sorts of things. And he started breeding crab apples, sort of a semi-retirement project. When Mum and Dad took over the nursery, Granddad would still come out every day and potter about. And he would often go around on missions collecting heritage apple trees and things around the district. So he loved apples. And most people don't realise that malice and apples are actually the same family as roses. We're all malice, we're all related. And crab apples just have that extra seasonal thing where they have the blossom and the fruit.
And beautiful coloured foliage too. Some of them have glorious foliage. They're just such a fantastic stalwart for the garden, let alone for floristry.
And you can make like jelly from the fruit. You can make cider if you want to. I personally absolutely love them, but it has been a bit funny, as trends come and go. Like we used to grow a few thousand plants, and then things have sort of dropped off a little bit in recent times, but I basically keep them going like a legacy project. So we could grow Jack Hum and all of them, but we only grow the varieties that Granddad bred, and I think he bred from Jack Hum as well. So there's all little genetic links.
And I think some of the decline in the numbers being grown is probably more to do with the size of gardens people have these days. But then so many of the crab apples are columnar, so they could still have a crab apple. I have to say my favourite ones are the weeping ones, because I love having that weeping foliage either with the crab apples on it or when it's in blossom for wedding flowers. It's just stunning.
They are amazing. I lived in the South Island for a bit, and sometimes I would see things in people's gardens, and realise that they had been there for a long time, and to see established trees was amazing. You can put like Tom's Red in a little tub if you want to on a patio. Like, you don't have to have a big mess of extravaganza.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the best crab apple for a small space?
Yeah, I would say something like Tom's Red. It's just more petite, sort of compact grower. Jelly King is one that you want to put in the garden. That's more robust and has big fruit for jelly. But there's a few varieties of granddads that are well suited for the tub. I think Tom's Fleck would be another one that has a slight variegation, sort of stripe fleck to the fruit. There's sort of an orangey tone. Tom's Gold would probably be all right as well, although that might be a bit more of a garden tree. Yeah. We've got on my parents' patio, there's a 1 metre Ellerslie weeper that's been in a pot for about 10 years, and that looks lovely, and in the autumn has its little red fruits. It has that look, and it's just in a pot on the patio.
So what would be the one with the best small fruit? Because when you think about it, if you're using the fruit in floristry, you don't want huge fruit, you want lots of small fruit. What would you suggest then in that line?
I found Autumn Gold is amazing. It will drip like whole cascades of fruit, and they hold on the stem for a long time, and they're like pear-shaped golden, and they literally drip. And Tom's Orange as well. The fruit will stay on a lot later than some other varieties, and it's bright orange, and the birds don't eat them. Those would be my personal top two.
So a few final questions. What's the biggest misconception people have about roses?
Well, where do I start? I still find that people think that they're fussy little so-and-sos and they're going to be so much hard work, and they're scared of them.
I think it's scared of the pruning, because so many people have turned that into such a drama.
This is the thing, and my mum will say this a lot. If you want to be really fussy and particular about your roses, you can. That's fine. But you also don't have to. You can just leave them alone. You can prune them once a year, hack them back, give them some fertilizer, and that's that. So there's different spectrums. So if you want to fuss about and actually prune on an angle and all that kind of stuff, honestly, like, we just go for it. We hack them back. I normally say about knee height on me is about good. Whip out any dead wood and away you go. Like, pruning is actually really just, it's a cool thing. Like, how many plants can you literally hack back once a year and then they'll just flower for at least 6 months?
Yeah.
And then that's all you have to do. You can see where you've been. You're making a little rose sculpture. You're making it look good, giving it a haircut, just like how we go to the hairdressers. It's going to grow back. Do not stress. Yeah?
I love that. I love that. Actually, that's a really good way. If you're going to prune your roses, just act like a hairdresser and just cut them back and see what happens. So what rose breeding challenges keep you awake at night?
It's probably not breeding. It's probably actually growing in terms of the nursery industry things. I feel like it's a kind of a shame that it's just a natural progression of a breeder, like the dad's breeding lines. We've really worked hard to get everything to a certain level, but now the production level of rose growers in New Zealand is not as high as it was, say, in the 90s when we were doing 300,000 roses. Now it's averaging about 50,000 a year, which is still plenty enough for me, can I just say?
Yeah.
So in terms of breeding, it's still more just trying to find that next amazing thing. We're working on a line of eye roses, which have that Persica breeding, and there's many other rose breeders, like Chris Warner in England has done amazing work there. But we've just sort of been working on our own little line, same with stripes or painted roses. Those are the ones that are maybe not everyone's taste, but me and Dad have a bit of a thing for them. So that's our challenge, is to keep finding completely new flower shapes. We've also got a little line going of ones with like notched or frilled edges on the petals, and that's something new that we're looking at. So that's a bit of a challenge, but
yeah, that's your challenge, but it's also your joy. And everyone has to have that. So that's awesome. Now, before we sign off, I just need to say to everybody that Samantha's a very accomplished photographer. And much as I'd love to talk to her about photography today, we've waffled on for long enough and you're probably sick of us. But if you have got any questions about photographing your flowers or your roses in particular, just comment on the episode and Either Sam or I'll get back to you. You can follow her photography exploits on Instagram at Samantha Matthews Photo. So thank you, Samantha. It's been a joy. I love my roses. I love my crab apples. So it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Jo. I have to say, I have got quite excited and I've gone off on some tangents, but you have been amazing.
Tangents are good. This podcast is real.
It's so nice to just chat with someone who's just as passionate about things, and that's why it's just a joy that you're doing this podcast for all of us here in New Zealand, and we can learn from each other and get inspired. And so thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome, Samantha. To stay in the loop, follow Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers on Instagram. Their Insta feed is a place for behind-the-scenes looks and a sneak peek of what's blooming next. Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. That's it for this episode, Petals. I'm Jo Robinson and I'm signing off until next time, knowing that if we work together, we'll keep the New Zealand floral industry growing and flourishing.